So a little bit of backstory. I was involved in a church in California that was really abusive, highly manipulative, did a lot of damage. And in that church, a prophetic gifting was just very poorly handled and was really weaponized, used against me. And so when I came up to Bellingham, I had all of that wounding, and I had basically said, I am done with it. And then I met this one. Would you tell a little bit of the story for what you heard?
Sure. So after I asked Jesus to be my Lord and Savior, a year later, I was teaching English in Patagonia. And I lived with a Christian family, and I got to see faith lived out in such a beautiful way. They had very meager means, and I shared a bed with a teenager, and she was a fireball for Jesus. One night she couldn't sleep. She had her mouth bit in her mouth, and she just, hey, Katie, are you asleep? And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm awake. What is it, Lise? And she asked if I had a sign for my future husband. And I thought that was the most silliest thing ever. And she said, no, Katie, do you have a sign for your future husband? And as Pastor Joey communicated, I did feel some butterflies in my gut because I was discerning how to hear God speak. So when I heard, do you have a sign for your future husband? I was like, no, that's silly. Then she reminded me of the book, or the story of Isaac and Rebekah, and how Abraham was, please have my son marry in my tribe. And for me, in my past, when the Lord would woo me, I'd be wooed by a man. And so for me to have a sign for my future husband, it sounds silly, but I felt it in my gut, and I said, okay, I'm going to start inquiring. And so I did. I was asking the Lord quite a bit, and she would ask me every single day, did you get something? Did you get something? So I had the accountability, actually a little too much accountability. And to get her off my back, I said, when I meet him, his nose is just going to start gushing blood. And they're very romantic down south. And she was like, that is totally your flesh, Katie. That is not the Lord. Keep asking. And so I am a mountain girl. I love connecting with the Lord on the mountain. And I was in this place that's a little taste of heaven on earth called Toros de Paine. And it was my birthday week. I was backpacking by myself. And I was like, Lord, if there really is something to this, would you please show me? And I looked down, and there it was. A heart-shaped rock from Patagonia. Very specific.
So this is years before Katie and I had met, that she was received the sign that her future husband would give her a heart-shaped rock from Patagonia. We met actually at Boundary Bay, and I was a customer, and she was a server, and I was there with a speaker at a camp, and we were doing a youth camp down at Furwood, and I was showing him all the great places of Bellingham. And she said, you guys love Jesus, and you're doing youth, and you are, she goes, I want to pray for your youth camp. And so what she was saying was, I want to pray for you guys, but what I heard in my mind was, I want to go on a date with you. We have a debate about whether our first date was actually a date. She thinks it was a ministry report, but as we're getting to know each other, it's clearly a date in my mind. As we're getting to know each other on that first date, I shared with her that I had done my graduate work in geology in Patagonia, and that raised a little signal.
And I just want to add that my family at this point, they're like, you're going to be an old maid. Like, my stepfather was like, can we please put a profile for you on eHarmony? And my Nana was like, honey, like, you're getting older. And I was growing and hearing the voice of God. And
so she hadn't told me any of this thing about a sign. Now, since I was a geologist, I have friends, and everywhere they travel, I always ask them to get a rock for me. And this is maybe 5 or 6 months after we started dating. I had a friend who's going down to South America to do a hydroelectric project. And I said, dude, get me a rock, because I just collect rocks from all over the world. So he goes to South America. Not just South America, he goes to Chile. Not just Chile, he goes to Patagonia. Not just Patagonia, but he goes to the volcano that Katie, years earlier, heard your future husband is going to give you a heart-shaped rock from Patagonia. And he brings this rock back. I didn't even look at it. I didn't even pay attention to it. And Katie says, "What's that?" As it's in the living room, I said, "Oh, do you want it?" And I gave it to her. And it was a heart-shaped rock from Patagonia. And she still didn't say anything. And it wasn't until we knew we were going to get married and that she said, "Let me tell you a story about that rock." And what that had done for me.
Is that cool?
What that did for me was it restored something of God's amazing power to speak to this day in a way that wasn't harmful, in a way that wasn't manipulative, in a way that wasn't pressured, and was so beautiful. And it was a sign that is a sign of God's sovereignty in our life that the Lord had given to us and restored something to me that was taken away. Mm-hmm.
And I would just say that he was definitely worth waiting for.